She's not even officially Prime Minister yet, and already Labour has launched its first attack ad against Liz Truss. Now, naturally, it's a complete hatchet job in which they take the Guardian's lead by dishonestly twisting her decade-old comments about British graft and productivity and taking them out of context to try and turn the British workforce against her. Watch.
We say it's all Europe that's causing us these problems. It's all it's migrants that are causing these problems. Actually, what needs to happen is, more graft.
But British workers produce less per hour, and that's a combination of kind of skill and application. If you look at productivity, it's very, very different in London from the rest of the country. Essentially, it's partly a sort of mindset and attitude thing.
And despite Truss not even having started in a new role, graceless Keir Starmer decided not to offer his best wishes, but instead branded her an enemy of working Brits.
Well, we've heard far more from the latest Prime Minister about cuts to corporation tax over the summer than we have about the cost of living crisis, the single most important thing that's bearing down on so many millions of households. And that shows not only that she's out of touch, but that she's not on the side of working people.
So Labour are doing everything they can to ensure that she fails, as they should, as the opposition. But what do you think? Will Liz Truss be a competent Prime Minister? It's a simple question, but I'm desperate to know what you think. Email me, dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me at gbnews while you're there. You can vote in our Twitter poll. Those results coming up shortly. But to do battle on this, I'm joined by the political masterminds of Tory Big Beast and former Health Secretary David Malla, former Conservative and UKIP MEP David Bannerman, political commentator Emily Hewitson, former Conservative Minister Edwina Currie, and criminal barrister and former Tory MP Jerry Hayes. David Malla, let me start with you. You're not convinced, are you, that Truss is going to be competent?
I don't see how anyone can be, but that doesn't mean I'm against her. And I hope that she will do well. But the real problem that she's got is exactly the one that you have exposed, that most of the voices in the media will be against her. And what she has to do, therefore, is to put them on one side, like her heroine, Mrs. Thatcher, did, and appeal directly to the British people. I think she would have made a better start if she had shaken hands with Rishi Sunak before she went up and made her acceptance speech, because one of the problems that she inherits from Boris Johnson is a very divided party. I think what she has to do is also to try to speak the same language as the British people and get back to the Thatcherite principles of stating policy in a way that people will understand and relate to. But she does have problems. Labour have got a leader who is boring and has a boring voice. What Liz Truss has to avoid is not being boring and having a boring voice herself. She really is going to have to do what Margaret Thatcher did, which is to work on how she presents herself. And, there's often a joke around that can always help us at moments like this. The danger for Liz Truss is that people wonder whether, she thinks charisma is December the 25th, and she's really got to work on that.
Look, David Campbell Bannerman, I understand where Malla is coming from there. In saying that, we did see improvement over the course of the leadership contest, didn't we? She got better. She performed stronger the more that we saw of her.
I like her honesty. She said, she's not the slickest presenter. We know that, but she did get a lot better. I went to a number of the hustings. I was at Norwich, I was at London in person. What I like about Liz Truss is that she's got a great core. She's got a real resilience. That's the word that keeps coming back from Oxford friends, etc. And she also has enormous political experience. She's the longest serving cabinet minister. And she's gone from trade to the Treasury or the environment to justice. She understands a lot of these policy issues, and so she can hit the ground running. I've got actually a lot of confidence in her, and I think she'll surprise a lot of people because she has a lot of guts and she's prepared to make decisions.
Jerry Hayes, you're not convinced?
Well, I think she could be good. She could be adequate. Perhaps even she might be great. At least the grotesque experiment of Boris Johnson has gone. And the fact of the matter is, those Johnsonites who want to get him back have got to stop. We've got to have a united party. Let's have serious government now. Let's have policies which are thought through. Let's have a cabinet which is competent and honourable and honest. And if she can get all that together, we're in with a fighting chance of getting this moving properly and perhaps winning the next election. But she's got to have, as she said, a party, a government of all the talents. And let's see what happens tomorrow. If it's the same old faces, then forget about it.
Well, I just want to bring David Campbell-Bannerman back on that. David, I thought you might want to respond to the criticisms of Boris Johnson there, because, of course, you, along with Lord Crowthers, have actually been leading the charge for Boris to come back, or for at least him to be on the ballot.
Yes, I mean, what we wanted with a Boris ballot was a yes or no, whether to keep him or not. And we thought that was really important because a lot of people were threatening to just spoil their ballot papers, and that's very bad for the party. But they haven't done that, fortunately. A lot of people have just backed Liz, and quite rightly. I mean, Boris, I think it's outrageous to attack Boris. I mean, I've been a Conservative in 13 years of Labour rule. It's not a happy place. And Boris Johnson gave us an 80-seat majority, the best since 1987. So why on earth is he being attacked by Conservatives? Whose side are they on? Do they want a Labour government? But Boris will always be around. I think he had a super record on delivering Brexit. That's very important to me. The vaccine programme, well ahead of the rest of the world. Ukraine, levelling up. There's a long list, and he's done an awful lot, and who knows what happens in the future.
So whose side are you on, Jerry Hayes?
I'm on the side of competence, honesty, decency, and serious government. Government who can implement policies which are going to be very difficult, which are going to cost a lot of money, and tough decisions are going to have to be made. I want to support Liz Truss. I don't want to go back to Boris Johnson. Gosh, looking at Edwina, she's got him hanging in the background.
Yes. Well, I want to bring Edwina in, because Edwina, it was interesting, wasn't it? 18% of Tories didn't actually vote. Edwina, that seems like quite a high percentage, given that Tory members are usually very engaged in the democratic process. Do you think that may have been a reaction about Boris being deposed?
I mean, there are lots of good points to be made tonight. One of them should be, thank heaven for GBNews. At least we get the opportunity as Tories to debate and discuss what needs to be done and where we're going on all of this. In the end, what really matters is not the campaign. I just wish it had been over an awful lot quicker. We actually haven't had any government for about 7-8 weeks. And at a time of such problems, that's not the way Tories should be behaving. But what happens now, and particularly what happens this week and in the next few days, the announcements that are made about how to tackle the cost of living, how to tackle gas prices, what exactly is going to be done, not merely for households, but for businesses as well, to get us through this difficult winter. That's what everyone is going to judge our Prime Minister and our government on in future. If we make a mess of things over the next few months, then we can kiss goodbye to the general election when it comes in 2 years' time. In fact, it's less than 2 years. We're going to have to really work very hard on this. Unity is essential. I'm sure the Tories will give it. I really don't give a toss where Boris gets up to or what he does from now. I wish him all the best. I hope he makes lots and lots of money for all those kids of his. That's what a father ought to be doing, providing for his children. But when it comes to it, in the end, we need strong government with wise decisions. We need Liz to learn how to make a speech properly, how to write it. I would say to her, remember that deliver is what midwives do. You're not a midwife. You're the Prime Minister. You need to be much in a way grander about everything, but take the right decisions for the sake of us all.
And Emily Hewitson, this is the same problem that you have with Liz Truss, right? You actually agree with lots of her policies, but you're concerned about her presentation.
Yes, exactly. And as a result of that, I knew I definitely wasn't going to vote for Rishi Sunak, but I decided actually to spoil my ballot, which a lot of people disagreed with. They said it was a waste of a vote, but actually I think a spoiled ballot is a vote in itself. But yeah, the main issue I have with her is I don't see her as an election winner. I think she's got some great policies. I'm very in favour of kind of her low tax stance. But just the way that she delivers speeches is a massive concern. And I think that, you know, with how presidential our elections have come, whether people like it or not, it is a lot of focus on the person. And she does that awful thing where she pauses for an applause. And then there's that awful gap before people realise that they're supposed to be applauding. Little things like that that she really needs to work on. But I would say if she could put together a good cabinet with lots of the popular choices and kind of the proper conservatives like Kemi Badenoch and Suella Braverman, those types, that if she became quite reliant on that cabinet, that, you know, maybe we could change it this time and we could focus more on the policies rather than the person for a change, which we haven't had for a while.
David Mellor, the cabinet tomorrow is going to be absolutely fascinating. I don't like playing identity politics, right? But I wrote a column in the Mail Online earlier, and I said, actually, you know what? Yes, this is a very diverse cabinet. Great. 3 female prime ministers. But actually, I hope she doesn't rule out all the old straight white men, because I'm hoping to see David Frost in the cabinet. I'm hoping to see Ian Duncan Smith back. I'm also hoping to see John Redwood back. What about you, David? Who do you want to see in the cabinet tomorrow to prove that Liz Truss is taking this job seriously?
I'd really rather take the time we've got together to. I mean, look, the best bums on the right seats. There will always be disagreements about that. But what we've had from this group, very diverse group, is a lot of advice that Liz Truss, if she's sensible, will take. She has to clean up her presentation act, and she has to recognise that since she's not going to get a fair shake from a lot of the media, she's got to develop the way that Mrs. Thatcher had. You know, I was a member of Mrs. Thatcher's government for 9 years. I had therefore the occasion to meet her on a few occasions, and I can tell you, she was one hell of a tough lady, but she took a lot of interest in how she looked. She took a lot of interest in how she spoke, and she was a very determined woman. But the other problem, and this is quite a serious problem, is that Margaret Thatcher was not a one-woman band. For instance, my old patron, William Whitelaw, who was her deputy, and she once notoriously said, everyone needs a Willie. Well, you know, she had a Willie. And basically, Willie Whitelaw was a strong man who kept the government and the party in line. Geoffrey Howe took all the flack. But at the end of the day, when you look at the way that her government transformed the British economy, the man at the heart of that was Geoffrey Howe. Now, I have to ask this question. You know, there are too many lightweights at the top of Conservative politics at the moment. And who are the cabinet ministers who are going to be able to be Willie Whitelaw or Geoffrey Howe? It doesn't matter their sex, it doesn't matter their colour, but they've got to be good. I remain to be persuaded that a lot of these people are good enough for the task ahead, which is mammoth.
OK, no, I've got that. Edwina Curry, I just wanted to ask you about the cost of living, or as I call it, the cost of lockdown crisis, the energy catastrophe, as lots of people refer to it. Now, you've actually taken a lot of flack over the past few days for challenging that narrative, which is being developed by folk like Martin Lewis. I actually think that's really important that you are bold enough to do that, because there is a sense of doom, isn't there, being put in the air by the mainstream media. And it is political, isn't it, Edwina? We have to be honest about that.
Well, I gather that one of the clips of this morning's altercation with Martin Lewis has been viewed about 2.5 million times on Twitter. Last time I was that popular, I was in the jungle. So I'm used to that kind of thing. It doesn't bother me. But you're right. It is actually a very important debate. Do we flap around being very emotional, putting our head in our hands, as Martin did on national TV this morning? Or do we concentrate, really try and support people, give good advice and sensible advice? You know, we've been living off very cheap gas for a very, very, very long time. And so we've neglected a load of very sensible things like proper insulation or how much we use the gas and so on. The whole generations have no idea how to do that. And at the same time, business has been using gas in a very profligate way. We've been using very, very cheap gas that came originally out of the North Sea. It was one of the things that buoyed up the Thatcher government, as David Mellor will remember. We knew it was sooner or later it was going to come to an end. What we were not expecting was that Putin was going to turn the taps off. You know, we are involved in a European war. We're all involved in this war. It's the Ukrainians that are fighting, but the whole of Europe is involved in all of this. And until Putin is defeated, that's likely to be the case. Now, I'm hopeful that that will happen by the end of this winter. And I'm hopeful that one of the things that Liz mentioned in her acceptance speech was doing something about improving supply of energy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've all got to be thoughtful and sensible. It's the point that you've made over and over and over again during COVID, that either the government tells us all what to do and takes that burden on and disappoints us, or some of us actually, in our millions, take some responsibility, take some action and learn how to help ourselves. I think we need to do both.
Indeed. Former Conservative Minister Edwina Currie. Thank you so much to the former Health Secretary David Mellor, former Conservative MEP David Bannerman, the political commentator Emily Hewitson, and the criminal barrister and former Tory MP Jerry Hayes. What a lineup. So who do you agree with? Will Liz Truss be a competent Prime Minister? From Brenda on Twitter. I think there is more to Truss than meets the eye. Just watch her go when she hits the ground running. Go, Liz! From Rango. It's too early to say. However, these next 2 to 3 months will go a long way to determine whether she gets re-elected in 2023 or 2024, or that Starmer governs by default. And from Joan, yes, she'll be competent, but only if the media let her get on with the job. And your verdict is now in. It's a split opinion. 58% of you agree that Liz Truss will be a competent Prime Minister. 42% of you unconvinced.